Hello everyone, welcome to Analytics Space. In this video, we will be learning top 5 pivot table shortcuts that will save you a lot of time and effort. So let's get started. So as you can see here, I have mentioned all the pivot table shortcuts that we'll be learning along with their shortcut keys and the cell location that you have to maintain for the shortcut to be executed. If you are not on the specified cell location, the shortcut might not work. Okay, let's go ahead and use the first shortcut to create a pivot table. So this is the data that I have, and once I'm here, I will just press Alt N V enter enter. Okay, so the pivot table is created. Let's go back and try to understand what exactly happened when we press those shortcut keys. So here, when I press Alt, it opens up the menu bar for me and shows me the other shortcut options that are available. And then I pressed N. It opened up the further options available under insert section. And then I pressed V, which is a pivot table shortcut. And when I press enter here, by default it creates a pivot table using the table or a range. And then finally it asks for the data source, the range that I need to select. By default it selects the region around the cell. So when we were on this location, it selected all the data that was in that area. Okay, so let's try to create a very basic pivot table. I will select country and then revenue. So as you can see, the data is already selected. Now let's go and try out the second pivot shortcut, which is changing the data source. Now let's assume we enter a record here and add some value here. Now when we go back here and we want to include the new entry that we just entered, we will use the shortcut of changing the data source. So I'll press Alt J T I enter. So as you can see, it has brought up us to the data source that was already selected. And now I can select all the data here until the end. A good idea is to select until the end so that whenever a new record is inserted, we don't have to refresh the pivot table. When I press enter, there is a new entry and that's how it got updated. The third shortcut is refreshing the pivot data. So now let's go back and change this data. Now once I've changed this data, you can see here the value hasn't updated. So we will use the shortcut to update this value. So the shortcut key is Alt J T F. Now as you can see here, after using these shortcuts, there are two options I have. If I press R, it will refresh this pivot table, and if I press A, it will refresh all the pivot tables that are in this workbook. So in this case, whatever we do, it will just refresh this pivot table for sure. Okay, as you can see, this has already been refreshed. The next shortcut that we'll be learning is sorting the data in pivot table. So let's go back to the pivot table that we were using. Here, if I press Alt A S D, it has sorted the data basis this value. Let's suppose there was one more value here. Now, so let's sort the pivot on this data. I will press Alt A S D. As you can see, this has sorted the data. The last pivot shortcut that we will be learning is pivot chart. So let's go to the pivot table and press Alt F1. As you can see, it has directly created a pivot chart for me using the data in the pivot table. I hope this video was helpful to you. In case there is any video that you want me to create, please do comment below. Thank you for your time.